Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
That sound means it's time for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I am your host, Chase Smith, and with me, Cavs insider, national NBA writer, Sam Amico of AmicoHoops.net. Sam, long time no pod, and from the looks of it, we haven't missed much. What's going on?
Yeah, not a whole lot. You know, I get a lot of emails and Twitter notifications and stuff on my Facebook page that the Cavaliers are unwatchable. And you know, many nights they are. Some nights they scrap and play hard and are fun to watch, but you know, they're not going to pull it out. And then other nights they're just, you can't watch them past the first or second quarter.
It is a labor of love. We can tell you that. So let's talk about the state of the team. Right now we are 9-40, fresh off a loss to the Celtics tonight. Dead last in the NBA. 28th in points per game, 26th in rebounds per game, 29th in assists per game, 23rd ranked defense. Losers of now 5 straight. Sam, this is not good.
Well, it's not good in terms of the product, in terms of moving merchandise, in terms of you know, selling tickets to games. You know, we always hear everybody. I hear a story like once a week of, hey, yeah, my buddy got the Cavs tickets for $2 or something. So, I mean, they're just not, you know, the product is the opposite of what we've gotten used to the last 4 years. And in that sense, it's bad. It's bad for business. It's bad for, you know, winter businesses downtown that were booming the last 4 years. You know, you'd have a sold out restaurant on a Tuesday night for the Sacramento Kings because LeBron James is playing. Now, you know, the only chance you have of filling up your restaurant in downtown Cleveland is if LeBron James and the Lakers come back or the Warriors come back, and that only happens once a year for each. So that in that sense, and from a business standpoint, from a fan standpoint, it's just an entirely lost season. You know, now, obviously, when you're talking about the NBA draft and the lottery and getting one of the two, what most people would say, one of the two big prizes out of Duke, you know, then this is what you want to happen. You want to go all the way down. You don't want to meddle in the middle. You want to be dead last, and that's where they are right now.
Sam, the over-under for the wins in the season was 30.5, and right now we have 9, almost a quarter of the way through, a little further than a quarter of the way through. I mean, where do you see us – how many wins do you see us getting, Sam?
Boy, 15 maybe. I think if they win 6 or 7 more, you know, I don't know. You know, I mean, does Kevin Love come back to this? I don't know. I mean, you know, I can't get a feel for that, whether or not they're going to bring him back. And this season, I just can't get a feel for that. So, and I don't know how much, you know, they weren't what, 0-4 when he went down. So I just don't know that will make a huge difference. And it's just, that would be my prediction. I think if they're lucky, they'll win 6-7 more. So
the least amount of wins in an NBA season is 6 from 1948 by the Providence Steamrollers. And then we had 7 wins. I'm looking here. I just did a quick Google search on the Charlotte Bobcats in 2012 and the 76ers, 9 wins in 73 and 10 in 2016. I think it's safe to say that we won't be historically bad, which is a sigh of relief. Cleveland exhales as a sigh of relief. Again, they're not going to be historically bad, but Sam, 15 wins is nothing to hang your hat on.
Well, you know, and you talk about those 76ers teams, the Hornets. I think, were they the Hornets then or the Bobcats then? I don't really know.
The Bobcats.
Yeah, they haven't really come around and recovered. I mean, they've had a couple nice years there, but never really competed for a championship. You know, now the Sixers obviously have hope. I wouldn't say championship hopes, but not, at least not this year. But they're on their way. Have been on their way to good things. So, you know, you've just got to pick which model of patheticness you want to follow, and that's your hope if you're the Cavs. You know that you'll be able to gut this roster for the most part. bring in top draft picks. You're not going to get any free agents to a 15-67 win team if that's what they end up being. So you just have to make the most of your draft picks, and you've got to make the most of your trades, and that's what they're facing right now. They're facing some crucial months here off the court in terms of the trade deadline on February 7th, and then you get the lottery in May. You got to hope you get that at least second pick, and then you got to hit on your draft pick in June, and then again you're going to be making trades probably around the time of the draft as well in June. So they have some very critical months in determining where this franchise is going to go moving forward. These next 3, 4, 5 months are going to be very vital to them and how they are able to turn this around.
Sam, what is the update on Coach Drew? I know whenever he was first kind of brought on, it wasn't an official title, and that was kind of a little cause of dissension. Like, where are we at with that?
Well, he's the coach. He is the coach for the year. He's signed through the season, and I guarantee, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty I feel pretty certain that if he gets fired at the end of the year, that he will going to come with some extra money. So that's where that stands right now. I frankly think the guy is okay. I actually like Larry Drew, and I haven't said that about a Cavs coach. Now, I don't mean on a personal level. I mean on a coaching level. I haven't said that, boy, I feel good about this guy. He makes the most of the hand he's been dealt, which isn't anything. He does get the Cavs to scrap and claw some nights, a lot of nights, and he's a no-nonsense guy, yet he also has the players' respect. It's too hard to tell about his rotation because he doesn't have guys to use, but there's never been a time where, I felt like, what is he doing playing this guy and not that guy and not doing this? I mean, granted, you're not going to think that about a team that's 9-40, but I am all for bringing back Larry Drew. I really am. I think that he is a good coach. I think that he's a smart coach. He's a very good, astute X's and O's guy. He's not he gets the players to respond and play hard most nights, and they just don't have the talent to overcome anything else. But I like, and I don't know who else are you going to get. Here's a guy who's working hard. Yeah, there's Frank Vogel, but you know what? I don't know that he's a better coach than Larry Drew. I think that I think that he's done some nice things, in the past, obviously with the Pacers, but I just think, I think you make a mistake by saying we need to get somebody else every time, because look, when Larry Drew had a good team, good players, he went 9-1 last season filling in for Ty Lue, and the team looked entirely different. All their issues went away.
True.
And then Ty Lue came back and they had those same old problems. So, frankly, from a fan standpoint, I like Larry Drew as the coach of this team moving forward. Unless you can get some huge, very accomplished guy, which I don't think you're going to get. You're going to get a guy who, to me, if you replace Larry Drew, you'll be replacing him with someone who's either the same or worse. So, and I think Larry Drew has done a nice job. I think he's a good coach. I really do.
So with that, Sam, you wrote a pretty interesting article on Amico Hoops. I was reading through it and got quite a lot of buzz. You looked at other rebuilding projects, which I think it's safe to say that we are either tanking and rebuilding or trying to do both at the same time, which I don't know if it always works. But you said that previous teams who have tanked always had a bright spot. You pointed to Devin Booker with the Suns, Joel Embiid with the 76ers, and you turn your attention to this roster the Cavs have and are not really a lot of bright spots. The players that the team was selling us, Colin Sexton, Chetty Osman, haven't really developed the way that we like to see. It's a pretty interesting take.
Well, I think that the Cavs, look, I don't want to say, look, Sexton's 19 years old. I still don't think you know what you have there. You haven't surrounded him with anybody in terms of guys who can really create off the dribble. And granted, he didn't have any assists in the game the other night that they lost, and I don't know who, I can't even remember who they played before the Celtics, but whoever it was, he didn't have any assists that game. But at the same time, nobody else can really shoot. So I don't know how you can blame the guy for not getting up. He's not let's face it though, he's not a great setup guy in terms of helping people get baskets, but it's just a bad combination in terms of the 19-year-old and Jetty Osman, and then you have some veterans who are kind of in the last year of their deal, and Rodney Hood and Alec Burks, and then you got Tristan, who, when healthy, is not a guy who's going to score a lot for you. So it's tough for a 19-year-old playing the most important position on the floor, and now starting and facing, the top-notch point guards, the starting point guards, opposing point guards every night. So I think he needs more time. At the same time, I certainly don't think he's hit his ceiling. At the same time, I don't know that he has that kind of all-star potential. You saw that in Kyrie Irving when he was 19 years old and came to Cleveland. You saw it in a few other guys that were young, came to Cleveland. Andrew Wiggins, who has never lived up to that. But I just think that they need something. Look, maybe next year, okay, the hypothetical, Colin Sexton, Zion Williamson from Duke, Kevin Love, Tristan Thompson, and then they trade, Hood and Burks, which I think they're going to do, and get a decent young shooting guard. Then all of a sudden, you've got an intriguing team, and maybe Sexton develops alongside veteran players better than he would, and other players like Zion Williamson who can create their own shot, or R.J. Barrett from Duke who can create his own shot. Maybe Sexton develops, but it's a tough situation for him. So I don't want to rag on him too much. I just don't know that look, the worst thing that happened to the Cavs, in my opinion, last year was the Brooklyn Nets were a lot better than people thought they were going to be. So they ended up with the 8th pick as opposed to a top 3 pick where they could have gotten a Luka Doncic or that would have been nice. That things would be a lot different if he were here. Trae Young, who's not spectacular, but I think is going to be an all-star at some point. So, there are a lot of guys that they could have got had the Nets been as bad as everybody kind of thought they would be.
Let's talk about some trade deadline moves. You mentioned Burks and Hood as potential targets. You think both of those players will be moved?
I would be surprised if they were both here. The only thing about Rodney Hood is he signed a qualifying offer before the year, so that gives him the right to veto any trade. Mm-hmm. Now, I can't imagine if the Golden State Warriors, who I've heard are interested, were to trade for him, that he would turn that down. Right. Now if the Atlanta Hawks came and traded for him, or wanted to make the Cavs an offer, then he would probably turn that away. But I think that I'd be surprised if Hood is here after the deadline next month. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We're 2 weeks away. February 7th is the 2019 trade deadline. What were you going to say about Burks?
Well, his deal is for a little bit more. He's making $11 million. There are a lot of teams who are interested in him, but again, his contract, like Hood's, comes off the books at the end of the year, so people will be interested in that expiring contract. Burks isn't drawing as much interest because his deal is a little bit more expensive, and the teams that would acquire him would have to give a little more back. So, they're not going to get much for either one of those guys, But if you could get a nice young player for Rodney Hood, which you would be able to do because he's basically on slightly more than a rookie contract at $3.4 million. Could you get old friend, what's his name, Quinn Cook from Golden State, Quinn something or other, Quinn Cook?
Yeah, Quinn Cook.
Yeah, if you could get him, which you might be able to do. They have a couple other young players there that are kind of intriguing. You would be able to probably get one of them because they're obviously in win now mode and win forever mode. There are teams that are out there, San Antonio, Toronto. I wouldn't be surprised if Boston has some interest. And I wrote in the column a few other teams. Milwaukee has a great deal of interest. Maybe the Cavs could get Dante DiVincenzo from Villanova, who's a Bucks rookie, and is suddenly kind of fallen out of the rotation there. And he was the NCAA championship game MVP last season. So maybe you could get one of those younger guys with upside and intrigue for a guy like Hood. You're certainly not going to get any draft picks. I know that the Spurs are interested in Burks. I don't know that you would get what you're looking for from them. So I think that the Cavs would be more than happy to part ways with those guys, though, regardless of what they get. If they can get anything that they might be able to flip later in a trade, I think they'd be happy. So I'd be surprised if either one of those are here, Chase. Now, we want to talk, bigger deals. There's a lot of interest in Tristan Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's been a pro's pro this year. Last year at this time, we were talking about him. We couldn't wait to get rid of him.
Yeah.
But the Cavs and I think their fans feel differently about him now. He seems to be focused. He plays hard every night. He's a voice of leadership and a voice of reason, both on the floor and in the locker room. I mean, I've seen him on the sidelines directing the younger guys, and he plays hard. He doesn't get mad at anybody. He's been a real
very good demo reel, very good audition. He's passing
right, yeah. And I mean, he's done everything that they hoped and more. Really, I mean, he's been great in that sense. And plus, he's got a huge contract, so that's going to be hard to move as well, because you don't want to just take him and take a bunch of bad contracts. Now, the Cavs are willing to take, one bad contract that they could potentially trade later, but they don't want to take a bunch of them. So that's where the real intrigue is. I think with guys like Tristan, I don't think Love's going to get traded. Not with him not playing at all this year, or playing those 4 games. They're just, other teams aren't going to take that huge risk on him. I don't think so. There's interest. There's interest in Clarkson. Hey, look, unfortunately, sadly, it looks like Victor Oladipo tonight. He suffered a huge knee injury, could be out for the year. Maybe the Pacers are saying, you know what, we need some scoring. What about Clarkson? Could we bring him off the bench? What would we do to get him? It's going to be interesting, because the next couple of weeks here between now and the trade deadline, I'm sure a lot will develop that'll make teams rethink the way they're thinking things. And the Cavs obviously are going to be, the phrase is selling. And so they'll be selling their players to other teams. And Chase, they'll make one trade. I said last year I didn't think they'd make any. I was way wrong. This year I'm going to say they're going to make at least one, and I'm pretty confident I'm right, unless something goes horribly awry. Kobe Altman better hope they make one, or he could be in big trouble after the season.
So, Sam, will there be 5 players on this roster on the team next year
that are on the roster now? Yeah. There'll be 5. There'll be 5 or 7. Okay. I mean, you've got to keep. You can't trade everybody. It's just too difficult. They probably would if they could. You just can't. It's just too difficult. So, I think there'll be at least 6 anyway. I shouldn't say at least 5. I think there'll be at least 5. And if they're lucky, there'll be only 4. So they'll be able to flip over the roster pretty quickly, because I know you don't want to stay in tank mode too long. It's okay to do it a year. Year number 2, you start to run into financial problems. You start to, run into fan apathy. And thank heavens for the fans of Cleveland that the Browns have created a lot of interest. But the Cavs realize this, and they know that they can't just stink, because they'll get 4,000 people at the games. They have a hard enough time when they're going to the finals competing with the Browns, and the Browns are 0-16. They really do, because this is a football town. So, they know that. They don't want to stay in tank mode beyond this year. Next year, they want to take some steps and show the fans, hey, we have a young, exciting team. And you know what? If they get a guy like Zion Williamson, who's all the talk in college basketball, if they get him, that's going to create some instant buzz, and they're desperately going to need that. If they don't get him, they've got a lot of things to figure out.
So right now, the Cavs are in the driver's seat for the number 1 pick. We have the Bulls and the Knicks, who are 1 and 2 games back respectively for that lottery pick. Atlanta's actually the 4th worst team. Sam, you feel like we're going to hang on to that best odds number 1 pick?
Well, first of all, what kind of idiots are the Bulls to come here on a perfectly losable game, come in Cleveland and win?
Yeah.
I mean, what are they doing? But yeah, I think that the Cavs will. They're going to have They're going to have a fight now, Chase. The lottery rules have changed this year,
Okay.
so that the number 1 pick and number 2 and 3 all have the same odds. So
Oh.
the good news is if the Cavs don't finish with the worst record and they finish with the 3rd worst record, it's still the same as finishing with the worst. The bad news is if they finish with the worst, the Knicks and, say, the Bulls are going to have every bit of good of a shot to win the lottery as the Cavs. And that's kind of the league's anti-tanking thing, because guess what? 4 and 5 teams that finish with the 4th and 5th worst records aren't that far behind number 1. So, but the Cavs are going to be top 3 worst, and we all know that, and they're going to have the same amount of odds to win the lottery. And I heard a GM. I was just shooting the breeze with a GM the other day, and it wasn't Kobe Altman, but I said, well, what happens if the Cavs get the 3rd pick? They don't get Zion Williamson or Barrett, and he said, well, first of all, a lot can happen between now and the draft where guys just come out of nowhere in the NCAA tournament and shine, and then they're the clear number 3. But he said, I'm telling you, if the draft were held today and I had the number 3 pick, I'd trade it. He said, if I didn't get Williamson or Barrett, I would trade that 3rd pick and use it as part of a package. If you trade the 3rd pick with Cedi Osman or Colin Sexton, all of a sudden you get a really nice young player who's, after his 1st year, 2nd year. So that's something to think about. But to answer your question, Chase, I hope for their sake they get 1 or 2. One's better, but 2 would be okay too.
Phoenix is that 4th team. They're at 11-38 as well. Sam, I'm going to make an unpopular statement that is in the minority. I am not a fan of Zion Williamson.
I have some questions, but go ahead. I'll let you finish.
I just something about the way that he plays. I don't know. I have a really weird feeling, and I would not. This might be the worst take, the one that people come at me from years on later. I would not draft him number 1. I think he has major bust potential, and even when I saw highlights in high school, there were just things I didn't like. Defense, effort, and I've seen his tenacity get a little better at Duke, but I don't know. I have major reservations with Zion right now.
I have some reservations, and I know people are going to say you're nuts, but I'll say this. There's a big, big difference between the ACC and the Central Division. There is, and I know people don't think so. They don't think so, but one thing people forget is 90% of the, I'm going to say 95% of the players in the NBA were superstars in college. You know, people like Matthew Dellavedova. People are like, well, he didn't even get drafted. He's a little guy who made it. He was outstanding at Santa Clara. Outstanding. He could have played at Duke. You know, people don't realize that. Damian Lillard, who went to Weber State, you know, when he was at Weber State, I saw him play a couple times, like in the tournament, or I was just flipping through, and I was like, wow, this guy is phenomenal. But I didn't know, you know, he's playing against Idaho. I didn't know how good he'd be in the pros. And the one thing I would say about Zion Williamson is that he, you know, to support your point a little bit, and I get a little nervous too. He has always been far and away the biggest guy and the best athlete wherever he's played.
Yep.
High school, obviously. I can't imagine the poor high school kids that had to go against him just last year. And then at Duke. Well, he's not going to be far and away the biggest guy and the best athlete in the NBA. He's just not. He's going to be one of the bigger guys. He's going to be one of the better athletes. You know, he has Sean Kemp potential. He has Charles Barkley potential. Yeah. He has that potential. He does. There are things about him that make me nervous. He could be. There are times I look at him and I think he's going to be a slightly more athletic version of Draymond Green, which is a nice player, but he's not a number one overall pick. You know, there are things about him, Chase, I think that he could be phenomenal, but I don't ever, there's no guarantees. And I think that he can make me nervous a little bit in terms of what if this guy comes and he just proves to be this? Because Zion Williamson is not a finished product. I can tell you, watching the NBA for 20 years, you know, up front, up close, and seeing Zion Williamson, he's not a finished product by any stretch. He's not going to change the course of your franchise by himself. Not yet. Now, maybe someday, but there are some reservations. And look, you know what? Duke guys scare me overall. I mean, Jahlil Okafor, and people will say, "Oh, I knew he wasn't good." No, you didn't. Everybody thought he was going to be great. Same thing with Jabari Parker. Oh, he's 6'9", he can handle the ball, he can shoot. Jabari's going to be an awesome pro, 10-time All-Star. That's what people were saying about him then. That's what, and now they'll go, "Oh, I knew he couldn't play defense." No, you didn't. Everybody was saying how great Okafor and Parker were, and why Zion Williamson is so much better than those guys. Yeah. Okay. And then, because you know what? Nobody remembers what you said about Parker and Jahlil Okafor. Nobody cares. Yeah. But it's you have to. I'm always a little leery of guys from Duke. I just am. Now I know Kyrie Irving was phenomenal. Grant Hill was phenomenal. Excuse me. I'm sure there were some others in there that I'm forgetting. But
Shea was great. Duhan was better.
Yeah. They were solid, but I mean,
Kyrie might be one of the. Kyrie might be one of the better Duke products.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking, going back to Christian Laettner, he made an all-star team or two, but he wasn't changing the course. The recent ones are the ones who scare me, and they're all the guys who play Zion Williams' position. Parker, Okafor, and I like RJ Barrett. I think he has Grant Hill potential. I don't know. You cannot put all your marbles in one basket. You just can't do it, because if you do, you're going to be in trouble.
I'm anxious to see how Zion does in the tournament. Zion is supposed to be this game changer, this transcendent player, and they lost the first week of the season, and then they've lost 2 games. If you're that good, I don't want to see you lose. Show me you're that good by running the table. Show me you're that good by dominating the March Madness tournament. I want to see you be this good. Take that challenge, hear all that people blowing you up, hear all those people saying, "Oh, you're going to be the next big thing," and go out and prove it, show it.
Yeah. Well, people don't realize how difficult and how great you have to be to play in the NBA, because they see NBA players against other NBA players. Yeah. But take Cameron Payne from the Cavs. He's on a 10-day contract, second 10-day contract. Take him, and he's been okay with the Cavs, but I mean, he's on his 200th team or whatever. Actually, he's third. But if you took him and put him right now on, say, Notre Dame, people would be talking about him as the number 3 or 4 pick in the draft with his skills right now, because he's played against NBA players. And then you take him, put him back in college, he would be an absolute stud. Yeah. And he is a guy who's clinging to NBA life. So there are those things to consider that we don't see, and you can't expect casual fans or even diehard fans to be able to see that stuff. But I've seen it for so long. Look, Anthony Bennett was a phenomenal college player. He wasn't Zion Williamson, but he was phenomenal. So, I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade here with the number 1 pick, because it's still better than the other alternatives.
I'm with you, man.
And we'll know a lot more, like you said, about Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett as the season goes on. But they are clearly the top 2 players in college basketball right now. That doesn't mean they're going to be top pros. That just means they're top 2 players in college basketball. I mean, Kawhi Leonard went 14th? In the draft. So he maybe. Yeah. I mean, Dirk Nowitzki went 9th. You don't know.
Yeah. Luka went 3. You just never know.
Right. Exactly.
Before we close out, Sam, let's go to our favorite segment, overreactions or on point. Have a couple statements here. You tell me if that is on point or if that's an overreaction. You ready?
I love to do this. Go ahead.
All right. The Cavs will win fewer than 20 games. Overreaction or on point?
On point. I think I said 15, so yeah, you're right there.
I want to say I'll take the Cavs over 20 wins, but not much over.
Boy, you're not going to sound real good, when I get all this notifications from readers. He doesn't like Zion Williamson, and he thinks the Cavs are going to win 21 games.
Dude, let's if the Cavs win over 20 games, you treat me to dinner. If they don't, I'll treat you to dinner.
You don't have to treat me to dinner.
No,
I'm just, right. Because I know they're not gonna.
Might be a McDonald's.
Okay. All right, you got a deal.
All right. Here's one. Kevin Love will retire a Cavalier. Overreaction or on point?
Overreaction.
Interesting.
The only way he's going to retire a Cavalier is if he has a career-ending injury,
but
which
Sam,
I hope he doesn't.
And they had all the construction workers, and it was in the arena, and it was this really cool photo op. But what about that, Sam?
What is LeBron James? I was sitting 2 feet away from him in Akron, Ohio, at the Infosys Stadium when he said, "I'm not going to leave again. I don't have enough energy." So none of that matters. I think that Kevin will be one of those guys who could potentially finish his contract in Cleveland and be 34 years old. And then he'll be one of those guys. You ever see those guys, like Vince Carter, or guys who gosh, remember when they were really good, but now they've played for seven.
Still balling.
Yeah, but they play for 8 teams, one team every year for 8 years. I think Love will be one of those guys. Yeah. He'll be, after his time in Cleveland's done, he'll play for 9 different teams. Yeah. That's my thought on that. Anyway.
All right, Sam. The Cavs' season shining moment will be beating the LeBron-less Lakers. Overreaction or on point?
On point. On point. To win in LA, to beat the Lakers. Well, what else are they going to do? They're not going to go and win at Golden State. So I don't see how it gets any better than that, other than if LeBron had played. Their 2 best games of the season, in my opinion, were both against the Lakers. They played the Lakers very well in Cleveland. They played a nice game that night. The thing that's weird about them is that they did, when they played those first 2 games and they had everybody healthy and they still had some veterans on the team in Toronto and Minnesota, I thought they were, this is a team that's going to hit that 35, maybe 40 win mark and get into the playoffs. But
yeah.
But it just didn't happen.
Don't go back and listen to our season preview. We were talking about Rookie of the Year, Most Improved Player for Chet. It was just a bunch of oofs. And
hey, you know what? It's better to think positive.
Amen, man. I'm super optimistic. So, with that said, Zion, last one. Zion is the missing piece, and will bring us back to basketball relevance, overreaction, or on point.
Overreaction. I think that he, again, thinking positive, I think he's going to be a great pro. I really do. You never know what's going to happen, though, when you give a 19, 20-year-old millions of dollars and how they react to that, and if they're more about the basketball or more about the lifestyle. The game has come awful easy to him, and that's both good and bad. So, but I don't think you can ever say one guy alone is the guy who's going to bring you back to relevancy. I think that you're going to need Zion and you're going to need somebody else. Now, is that somebody else a healthy Kevin Love? Could be. Is that somebody else, a young player who's currently in the league that the Cavs are able to trade for this summer? Could be. They'll still have JR's contract to move. Somebody may want Kevin Love. So I think that either Zion Williamson or RJ Barrett will bring some buzz back to the franchise. And I think for that reason alone is why you take Zion Williamson, because more people like him. And if you get him, that's going to create more buzz than RJ Barrett will. But I think that they'll bring some buzz, and I think that they'll bring some intrigue amongst players who wouldn't want to play here otherwise will want to play with one of those guys. So I think it would be a good start to get either one of those. Now, again, if you get the 3rd pick, that's, remains to be seen. But I think if you get either one of those guys, you finish 1 or 2 in the lottery, then all of a sudden the Cavs are going to have some buzz again.
Well, that does it for the greatest podcast segment of all time, and there's nothing more on point than that right there. So, Sam, thank you so much for playing Overreaction and On Point. That also does it for Cavs on the Break for tonight. Thank you so much for downloading and listening. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. Follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Catch all of his work and writings at amicohoops.net. For breaking news, insider info, do not miss out amicohoops.net. Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Music, wherever you listen to download to podcast, we are there. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. That does help with all other search podcasts, iTunes algorithms. That would mean a lot. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think. Sam, any final thoughts, brother?
Yeah, I know we haven't done much of these lately, but we'll certainly have, at the very least, a trade deadline edition. I would imagine the week of the trade deadline.
Sounds good.
Whether you want to or not, Chase.
No, we're doing it. We are
All right.
doing it. All right. Appreciate
Thanks,
it,
man.
Sam. Mike Breen, take us out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.